Even to do the share screen, there's a different view on the share screen. Why do I have to? Okay, I think we got it. That's what that is. Ooh. All right, I think almost everybody's in. Well, no, we're still missing a few people, but we're good. We're good. We're going to get started. All right, so we've been talking about the skeletal system and looking at how if you found skeletal remains, how you could tell whether they're male or female. And last week we looked at the skull. Today, okay. So I want you to hold on to this, keep to this spot right there, and we're going to watch two videos today before we act. And on Wednesday, we're going to actually do an activity that you're going to use all this information in order to figure out the identity of 4 sets of bones. So we got notes, mostly notes today, but the activity will be Wednesday, and you probably need Wednesday and um, Friday to finish it up.
All right, forensic students, we are continuing on with our lesson over forensic anthropology. This is lesson 3 in a 4-part series. So, in lesson 1, we talked about forensic anthropology and the role of a forensic anthropologist. And then in the last lesson, lesson 2, we talked about the human skull and what sort of clues, as far
Okay.
as biological profile and other clues anthropologists can gather to then turn over to investigators when the human skull is found at a crime scene. Today, our focus is on the pelvic bone and specifically how it can be used to determine the sex of an individual. And then in the last lesson, lesson 4, we're going to talk about long bones in the body and how they can be used to determine the height of an individual. All right, now the discovery of skeletal remains is going to prompt immediate questions from investigators. And remember, this is treated as an active crime scene. It doesn't matter if these remains are fresh remains or ancient remains. Investigators are going to secure the crime scene. They're going to process the crime scene. They're going to ask questions. So some of the things that they're going to want to know if this is a crime scene that they are working, they're going to want to know, are these remains human? And if so, was this person male or female? What was their biological ancestry? How old was the person at death? How tall was the person? How long has this person been dead? And then what was the most probable cause of death? Now, forensic anthropologists are highly specialized in this field. Pathologists, police officers, coroners, crime scene investigators, field investigators, they're not usually properly trained to recover and analyze skeletal remains. So they might call in the assistance of the forensic anthropologist, who's going to be best suited to recover and examine the remains and provide answers to these questions that investigators are going to have. Now, after the remains have been recovered in the field, they're usually transported to a medical examiner's office or some other laboratory facility for examination. And for each set of human remains, forensic anthropologists will attempt to provide general physical descriptions or biological profiles, which we talked about in the last lesson. And by biological profile, we mean sex, age at death, ancestry, height. And then there's some other clues that can be determined as well. So they're also going to try to determine whether the bones provide evidence of cause of death and time since death. So all of those are things that bones can be used to determine, but the pelvic bone specifically is used to determine the sex of an individual. And the human pelvis provides the most reliable means for determining sex. The female pelvic bone is designed to offer optimal space for the birth canal, which is going to be reflected in its morphology or shape as compared to the male pelvic bone. Now, anthropologists, although they're going to take measurements to determine gender, they often can just eyeball it. So they can do a gross observation or just a visual inspection to determine if remains, specifically pelvic remains, are male or female. Now, just like we did with the human skull lesson, I ask you to pause the video and just kind of research the anatomy of the human skull before we got into the lesson. And I want you to do the same thing today. So if you have this worksheet, if you're in my class, you have this worksheet, I want you to pause the video and just do a Google search to try to determine where these different parts are located in the female and male pelvic region. And then what are some specific differences between the female pelvic bone and the male pelvic bone. If you're not in my class, you can see the different terms that you need to be familiar with before you watch the rest of the video. So pause the video now, do a quick search, and then come back.
Not pausing.
All right, so you need to make sure this is recorded in your notes. Perhaps you found it in your research. If you did not, just make sure that you know these are some differences in the female pelvic bone as compared to the male pelvic bone. Now, there are other differences that are not listed.
All right, so this video is also in your playlist, but we also have these notes in Canvas, so you don't have to write them down. And I got this in a couple of places.
Here, but these are the ones that I specifically want you to know for this class. All right, so let's start with the subpubic angle. So for female, this is going to be 90 degrees or greater. And again, that just provides optimal space for the birth canal. In males, this is going to be an acute angle. It's going to be less than 90 degrees. Then we have the hips, or what we call the ilium. For females, it's going to be more relaxed, wider. The male ilium is going to be more upright and narrow, and I'll show you a picture of that in just a minute. Now, as far as the pelvic cavity, for a female, it's going to be more oval shaped. It's going to be larger as compared to the male. The male's pelvic cavity is going to be smaller, and it's typically heart shaped. And then the coccyx is going to be shorter for a female, longer for a male. It's going to curve outward in the female and curve inward in the male. All right, so using this information, I want you to see if you can determine which of these pelvic bones, these are replicas, which of these replicas are male and which are female. Now, hopefully you got this right. So let's talk about some general characteristics of the male pelvic bone now that we can see an image. So overall, the male pelvic bone is going to be more rugged. The ilium, which are the hips, are going to be more narrow and upright. The pelvic cavity is going to be smaller as opposed to the female pelvic cavity. The subpubic angle is going to be more of an acute angle. And then the coccyx, although it's hard to tell here, is going to be longer in the male pelvis. Now for the females are often more gracile. Their pelvis is going to be smoother overall. Their ilium is going to be wider, so their hips will be wider. The pelvic cavity is going to be a lot larger in the female, and that's to provide that wide birth canal needed for childbirth. All right, so this is where we're going to stop for today. And I will see you in the final forensic anthropology lesson where we're going to be talking about long bones.
All right, so we are going to watch that next. Let me just get that in queue, and then where'd it go? Okay. But so again, I want to hop back to Canvas for a minute to let you know that. All right. So we're in the unit determining the age of the skeletal remains, and they have so we're going to look at the bones in a minute, but if we go back to the one that we had, let me just go back for a second. We are going to, all right, so if we start from here with Introduction to Anthropology, and we looked at that, okay. These are the things that we're aiming to be able to discover by looking at the bones. Like I said, you're going to have an activity where they're going to give you just a set of bones, and you're going to have to examine the skull, you're going to the long bone, the pelvis. So that all of the information on what kind of teeth, how to know the teeth, those are there. We're not looking at a video for the teeth, but I wanted you to see that that was there. And all right, here we are. Okay, so under female versus male skeletal remains, this is so they've labeled the names of the bones for you. They've identified of things that she just gave you, skulls for male and female. So that is here on this page. So I did want to show you where it was in Canvas. And I'll give you a chance to read that over after we watch this video. Okay. All right. And then we're going to come back and look at ancestry. Okay.
All right, forensic students, today is the last lesson in our forensic anthropology series. So this is lesson 4, and we're going to talk specifically about long bones in the human body and how long bones, when they're discovered at a crime scene, can help determine clues about a person, mainly the height of the person. So we know that skeletal remains, when they're found, are treated as evidence in a crime scene. So the crime scene is going to be secured, it's going to be processed, and oftentimes a forensic anthropologist is going to be called in to help answer questions. Some of those questions are going to be, are these bones human? If so, how old was this person? What was this person's biological ancestral background? Were they male? Were they female? How tall were they? What sort of lifestyle did they have while they were alive? And ultimately, what was their cause of death? So forensic anthropologists are highly skilled at excavating and analyzing human remains. Typically, field investigators are not. So they're going to call in the assistance of the forensic anthropologist to help answer some of those questions. So far we have talked about the skull, And we know a person's sex and ancestry can be determined using features of the skull. Age can be determined by or estimated by using the cranial sutures. We also know that we can use characteristics of the skull to determine whether someone is male or female. So we could look at brow ridges, the shape of the mandible, the shape of the eye orbitals, or the texture of the nuchal crest to get an idea as to whether a person's male or female. And if you need to go back and watch the skull lesson, the forensic anthropology skull lesson, make sure that you do that. We also, in the last lesson, talked about the pelvic bone and how it can be used to determine the sex of an individual. So we can look at and compare the ilium of a person's pelvis. We can measure the subpubic angle. Remember, for males, it's going to be an acute angle, whereas females are going to have an obtuse angle. We can also look at the size and the shape of the pelvic cavity to determine if skeletal remains, specifically the pelvic bone, is male or female. Now, today, what we're going to do is we are going to get into long bones. So long bones can give an estimation to a person's height. And so if you have not already done so, I want you to, if you're one of my students, you have this worksheet, I want you to take a look at the WebQuest, complete this first. Just like with the skull and the pelvic bone, it's important for you to get an idea of the long bones in the body before we start with the lesson. So if you haven't already done, continue on. So throughout a human's lifetime, bones are always being produced, repaired, broken down. And as a result, bones increase in length until the growth plate is what we call ossified or hardened. Now, this happens to about age 30. And then at about age 30, the process begins to reverse. Bones are actually going to break down faster than they're built. So we can use the growth and development of the long bones in the body to help determine a lot of information. And one of those specific pieces of information that we're going to talk about today is height. So if you'll take a look at this image, this is a picture of a Roman skull. And anthropologists were able to determine clues about this person based on their teeth. So they noticed that there was a lot of calcium buildup on the teeth, and so that gave a clue as to the way this person lived when they were alive. And they were able to determine this person had poor dental hygiene. So we know the skull, the pelvic bone, long bones in the body, skeletal remains in general can be used to identify a biological profile, so sex or age, height, or ancestry, but it can also be used to determine how the person lived or how the person died. All right, so long bones in the body, and by long bones, we are referring to bones such as the humerus, the radius, the ulna, the femur, and the tibia. So here you have a chart where you can see what those different bones look like. They can be used to estimate height. Now, this is an estimate. It is not exact. Sometimes it's accurate and sometimes it is not. But again, in forensics, it provides another clue that could help investigators. So measuring these long bones can give clues as to the height of a person, and the most accurate way to measure height is by using a person's femur, and that's the bone that runs from your hip to your knee. To get the most accurate estimation of height, it's also important to have other clues or other information, as for example, ancestral background and the sex of a person. So you can see here, and I'm going to have, it's hard to tell, but you can see this chart here, and in another slide over, I'm going to have this magnified so it'll be easier to see. But I have provided you with this chart. So we have different long bones in the body. We have information such as ancestry, and then we have different equations for male versus female. And so all of that information is going to be helpful when we're trying to determine the height of an individual. So to make it easier, I've supplied you with the height calculation chart, and we are going to use this height calculation chart along with some scenarios to help determine the height of a person. So let's do some practice problems, because at the end of the lesson, I'm going to turn you loose with some problems. I'm going to give you some information. You're going to use that information in conjunction with the height calculation chart to determine the height of a known bone or an unknown person. All right, so here is our first practice problem. The radius of an Asian male was found in the woods next to an abandoned house. Investigators measured the radius at 32 centimeters, and we want to know the approximate height of the deceased. All right, so we've got a lot of information there. First, we've got 32 centimeters as the length of the radius. So we have a place on our chart that gives us a formula for radius. We also know that this individual is an Asian male, so we're going to use this formula, 3.54 times the length of the radius, and then we're going to add 82 centimeters to that. So when I plug that in, I get 113.28. Then I'm going to add 82 to that for a total height of 195.28 centimeters. So the radius is a long bone in the forearm. And so we were able to use that to determine that this person is approximately 6 foot 4 inches. All right, let's do another practice problem. All right, so we have really simple. And I'm going to start by multiplying 2.28 times 43. That's going to give me 98.04. Then I'm going to add another 59.76 to this for a total height of 157.8 centimeters. And that's roughly about 5 foot 2 inches, maybe 5 foot 3 inches.
All right, so she's just going to do practice problems, and we have one of our own. So again, in Canvas, you have a list of charts and information that you need in order to do calculations. Let's go back for a minute. Alrighty. And the worksheet that I'm going to give you also has a calculation chart on it. Plus, it's going to give you a ruler we have another interactive kind of activity. All right, so I want you, and I'm going to give you time to read this over, but I want to introduce you to the activity, and I think I have to change the date in order to do that. So give me 1 second. Otherwise, it won't be available to you. I need to know that it is available. Today's the 9th. Okay. All right, go in. So now this should be, you see where it's going to show up for you. You may need to refresh your page. There we go. All right, so if you refresh your page, what you want to see now is Mystery of the Bones. Take those out. Take those out. Mystery of the Bones. All right. I need you to, and actually, I know what I did. Okay. This is where you're going to find the one that you need to upload to me, but there's also one in the module. So we're just going to look at the one in the module right now, which I probably have to. Why isn't it there? I know, because it's not published. It's not published. It's published, but not published. Okay, so it's in the module. But you can stay where you are, same thing. And we're going to make that bigger. All right, so this is the activity that we're going to do. And it's actually a PowerPoint. So this is why I had to send it separately, because you can read it in here. You're going to construct the remains found at a site. You're going to determine the sex of the skeleton on the pelvis and skull. You're going to determine the race of the skeleton based on the shape of the skull. You're going to calculate the height of the person based on the length of the femur. And you're going to explore how the skeleton can be used to determine the age. So they give you the information about the crime scene. And we have these 4 people who are missing. But then you're going to read, and they have names that are familiar, but these are not the pictures of those people. And then you're going to get um, sets of bones. So in the module, you can't do anything with it. But if you look at it from the assignment page, so if you go back to, and I'm going to try to do this from your view. So go back to the home page, open it as the PowerPoint and not the worksheet. All right, so you should have this one. So when you open it as a PowerPoint, you can manipulate things, I think. Uh, no. Okay, give me a minute. I may have to. All right, I tell you what, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to fix this so that it's the one that you can drag. And what you want to be able to do is to put the skeleton together, and then you have questions. So you're going to be able to measure the pelvis and decide whether the pelvis is male or female based on your measurements. And it's supposed to drag. Okay, so I have to give it to you in the version that you can manipulate. But you see, you're going to have a skull, and you're going to have information about the skull. You have the formula here that in order to calculate the length of the bone, and you'll be able to measure the length of the bone. And you have this information here to determine the ethnicity of the individual, and eventually, and then you have 4 of these to do, and eventually you'll get to the end where you have to, like I said, all right, so then you're going to have a data chart. And you might want to fill this in as you go. So when you do skeleton number 1 and you've decided its sex, you're going to record its height, its race, and decide which of these people that skeleton belongs to. All right, then you're going to have some summary questions to answer. Okay. All right, so you read up on it, and I'm going to fix this because you're supposed to be able to drag those things into place. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to do attendance, and I'm going to make sure that you get the one that you can manipulate, because that one didn't move. Because you're supposed to be able to put the skeleton together and um, take the measuring tool and actually measure the pelvis, and you can move the ruler around and measure the femur. And I want you to be able to do all that. And that didn't do that. So while I'm fixing this, you read those sections in Canvas. And then I'll change that up. And that's why I kind of did this today, to make sure that it was going to work for you. It worked for me yesterday, but it's not working today. Because that's not the PowerPoint, that's the worksheet. Okay. All right, so I'm going to do attendance first, and then swap that link out for the one that moves. So again, you've got 4 sections in Canvas that you need to be reading. Please read those because you have to be able to determine all of those things on, on this activity. Height, age, race, and male or female. All right, so again, everybody should be reading Canvas. Oh, okay. Thank you, Brooklyn. That is so helpful. Brooklyn said I did upload the right one, and it did allow her to move the images around. Okay, so give me 1 second to finish attendance and I'll come back to that. I don't know why mine didn't move. All right, Brooklyn, how did you open that? It said you uploaded the document one, and that might have been it. Brooklyn, which link allowed you to move it around? Uh, She said mine ain't moving. All right. Okay, yeah, that's the one. All right, let me see why mine's not moving. It should be the PowerPoint, and it should allow you to click on the bones and drag. Mine is not moving. All right, Brooklyn put a link in the chat. Oh, That was the point of putting the PowerPoint in there so that it would move. Okay. Oh, okay. Abigail said she moved it to from Canvas to open files. And that way she was able to. So it's how you download it. Let me see what's happening with mine though. Enable editing. Okay. All right, let's see if I can't do this. I'm gonna try something. Some folks say they can get it. I'm gonna try changing my link. I found mine that I can move. Remove that link. And then all right, so if you're trying to get into it now, hold on. Okay, and Savannah has, all right, Savannah can, I'm gonna copy this, what you have here, and send that to everybody. All right. So Savannah says you have to go to the remote version in Canvas and then hit download. And when it opens, the link for you want the link for the PowerPoint, then save the file to Google Slides, and then you should be able to edit it. All right, so I'm going to share my view and show you what you should be able to do with it if you can do all of that. So that's why we're starting today, so get through this challenge of just being able to open it. Okay. All right. So you should be getting it like this. And so when you know you got the right thing, because when you get to this part, you should be able to click on the part of the body, drag it over here, and put your skeleton together. Okay, so by the time you send it to me, all of your skeleton should be assembled. Sometimes you have to, whoops, rotate a little. Where's the rotatey thing? Come on, we want to rotate. There it is up there. Okay, rotate it first, and then you can put it into place. Okay, the fun part is figuring out where these bones go. And then you can tell these are the femur because they have the part that goes into the hip socket. So that's how you know that. And again, you're going to have to rotate this one. And you might have to bring him up a little bit because we're running out of space. All right, you can tell the feet from this one, you might want to turn a little bit. Um, all right, so keep follow the instructions they gave you. And sometimes my instructions are different because I have a different program. I don't actually not doing this in Canvas. So, and again, you want your thumb to be on the outside. So that's the one you want to put there. Okay. So look at where your toes are, look at where your thumbs are, and that way you know you got this skeleton in the right spot. All right, once you get your skeleton together, then you have to figure out, and you have to go back and fill this in. I'm just going to show you how to do this. But you can move the ruler over and you can measure the angle of the pelvis. So you can get the answer for that. With this one, they give you the description. So based on the information that they've given you, you have to decide whether this is a male or a female. With this one, you can actually move the ruler closer if that helps, so that you can um, give the measurement of the bone and then use the calculator to decide how tall the person is in centimeters. All right. When you finish with that, then we're looking at the race of the individual. So they give you all of the different races. There's only well, this they don't have Asian as, but they can tell Asian. Well, they're doing Mongoloid. So these are the races that they can determine. So Caucasian, Mongoloid, which is kind of Asian, and Negro or African American. Okay. And based on the information that you have, you are to describe the race of the skull. And then you're been finished with that one. So those are the four things you have to determine with each one. So then you're on to skeleton number 2, and you have to do the same thing with that. Skeleton number 3, skeleton number 4, and then you can record all of that information on the chart. So this is the part I need to see also. Put it on the chart, decide who's who, and then do your summary discussions as well. Okay. All right. Anybody still stuck? Anybody still not able to translate this to one that you can manipulate? And it's more fun to manipulate and move things around, but it can be done without doing that. All right, come back up here again. Oops. Where's my skeleton? Sorry. All right. Mr. Skeleton, move over here. All right, when you have it like this, you see that little arrow thing at the top? That's the one that's going to allow you to move it around. And then once you've got it in the position that you want, then you can bring it back over to the skeleton. Like this one, I guess I need to turn it. Rotate. All right, so you're looking, when you click on the bone, the box will come around it and the rotator will be at the top. Oh, it should. Um, let's see. If it doesn't have, isolate it first. 'Cause like before, when I was trying to do it in the skeleton, I couldn't find that. So isolate, drag it to the side first, and then click on the bone and see if that will give you because you should be able to rotate so that you can get it in place. Anybody else having trouble with that? All right, so I've demonstrated a lot of stuff, but do go back and read the introduction as to how they got where they got. And your task is to complete the slides of the 4 individual and complete the data chart. So this is what your aim is for this activity. And then when you finish the PowerPoint, you can save it as a doc because I don't need to move anything. I just need to see your completed version. And that might be a smaller thing to upload than the PowerPoint. And then that's what you're going to upload in the Dropbox. All right, anybody else have questions? Anybody else struggling to? Yes, you're going to work on this tomorrow. I really wanted you to read today, but I did this so that we can use this time because tomorrow is a short class. So I wanted to make sure this was in place, but I really, really want you to, I'm going to save mine so I don't have to do that again. Oops. I really wanted you to read the Canvas section first. So do some reading. Yes, we are going to do this in class, and we might still be doing it on Friday. But it's due Friday. Okay? It's due Friday. All right, so we got about a little more than 10 minutes left of class today. So first and foremost, make sure you can download it and you can manipulate it. And then read, please. Read, read, read. Go back to the Canvas units and read those over. All right. For the benefit of someone who just joined. right, thank you to all of those of you who helped get everybody situated. All right, so again, we will continue working on this tomorrow. So just come in tomorrow, log in, get started. Have questions ready if you have some. The objective is to be able to complete the data table at the end of the project. Okay? All righty. See you tomorrow.